Did you just graduate a coding boot camp and now you're worried that, the market's rough, you're not going to get a job, you've probably been hearing things, it's been increasing your anxiety. I'm going to share some advice with you and kind of a different perspective with you that I think will help alleviate some of those concerns. But the very first piece of advice I'm going to give is stay away from r/coding bootcamp. It's just a black-pilled community of a bunch of people saying like, yep, should have went to a coding boot camp and no one should go to a coding boot camp. And if you did, you're screwed. I'm sorry, you got scammed, blah, 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 blah. It's just a bunch of really bad advice where the blind is just leading the blind, or like sore CS grads that are not getting jobs, or like coming into r/coding boot camp, shitting on coding boot camp grads or students. It's a mess. I always have to take an opportunity to shit on toxic communities like that, but I'm being serious. Just stay away from that community. It is horrible. And it's just going to discourage you. It's not really going to give you a lot of practical advice, or there's going to be a lot of conflicting advice. So I know you think I'm joking. Trust me with this. But I'm just going to kind of rant about, like, because I've been helping people that have been coming out of coding boot camps, trying to find jobs. And, quite frankly, a lot of coding boot camp grads, they went through crappy programs. This was true a while back. This was even true in 2021 when developers were more easily hired. Like, there are a lot of bad coding boot camps. There are a lot of bad coding boot camps, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Coding boot camps should have always just been kind of like a piece of your journey. Coding boot camps are meant to give you some mentorship. It's meant to give you a bit of a foundation to learning, to becoming a better student, to kind of give you some sort of an outline of what to learn and give you some insight into the industry so that you cover a bunch of topics. You don't really get a deep knowledge on a lot of these topics. And when you graduate, you really deepen that knowledge and you build projects to reinforce everything that you're learning. That's the trick. When you come out of it, that is your opportunity to really build a ton of stuff or build a deep, complex capstone project to deepen that knowledge. Your goal is to deepen that knowledge at that point, right? You are still, like, if you have a project to showcase, you're still going to be applying to jobs every week. But majority of your time until you get that position is spent with project work. It's still too early on for you to let the foot off the gas with a ton of coding work. Spend a ton of time coding afterwards. Don't give yourself a long break after the program. I see so many people give up because they take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then they never really develop a schedule, a consistent pattern of growing as a software engineer. And some people will just like latch on to leak code problems, and that's all they do, thinking that's going to help them grow and that's going to help them get a job. It's a balance of things. And I want to talk about that balance right now. So when you graduate, here's your schedule. Majority of your time throughout your day or week, sometimes you only have like an hour to 2 to spend because you have to go back to a part-time job or a full-time job or whatever. So look at this as a ratio, not how many hours you should spend on each thing. But majority of your time is spent on project work. You have to reinforce those skills. And you got to build, like, project work is just going to build you up as a software engineer. Once you're past the coding boot camp, you've gone through the majority of your coursework phase. And as you start diving into project work, you're going to realize there are things that you don't know or you're not familiar with. And you look up documentation, you look up very specific niche articles to learn. It's not heavy coursework at this point. Majority of your learning comes through project work and looking specific things up to be able to progress through your projects. Majority of your time is project work. Please spend that amount of time with project work. A lot of people skip this portion and they don't really grow and they don't really have anything to showcase, which is another thing that you want to consider. When you get out of a coding boot camp, maybe the curriculum was so bad or you were rushed through it too much, or you had bad mentorship where you don't really remember much. That's where a variety of small projects to reinforce these foundational concepts or libraries or frameworks that you've learned come into play. You build a variety of projects to reinforce these foundations through different implementations, different contexts, And you spend a lot of time doing that after the coding bootcamp. If you feel like your knowledge you're a little bit better off with your foundations, with your knowledge, that's when you dive into a capstone project. A capstone project is an in-depth project that solves a problem that you want to get hired to solve, right? It solves a problem in a more simplistic way, maybe in the industry in which you are going to be applying dev jobs in. Maybe you want to build you want to like build applications that are focused on, like, they're just common applications you're going to find in the fitness industry. Maybe it's going to be mobile apps. I don't know if like you're going for mobile development. Maybe that's what your coding bootcamp was about. If you're going for websites, like in that industry, what are websites in the fitness industry going to look like? What kind of tools are out there? What kind of dashboards are out there? What kind of analytics tools are out there in the fitness industry? Study that. And if you, for example, are really passionate about bodybuilding and fitness, like, you know, apps that can be built that can help you out, that could probably help other people out, apps that would do things differently than apps that you currently have. You're like, if you have thoughts of like, I wish this did this thing, I wish this had this feature, that's a new opportunity to build an application that is better than one of your favorite apps, that does things very differently, and it's your own kind of unique flavor of how to solve this problem in the fitness industry. That's what you're aiming to do with a capstone project. You build a landing page around it, you launch it. This is just an example of kind of like a mindset to have with that capstone project. You're building something real that you're going to use, that other people are going to use, and you share it with other people in that industry. You share it on subreddits, you share it on forums, you get feedback. You take that feedback and you continue building that capstone project up and up and up and up until it becomes very complex. And now it's like, oh, I got to manage user authentication. A lot of people want to save data. Now what happens if there is a lot of data coming through this application? Does my application aggregate a bunch of data every single time someone loads the page? Like I did with an old Twitch API app that I built that crashed, and because it started out like it would take 30 seconds because it aggregated a bunch of data every single time someone loaded the page until it crashed, and employers couldn't even load it. I made that mistake, but that's a good learning mistake to make as I would flesh out an application that more people used when I was trying to still become a developer. So you can do this as an aspiring developer, but I kept building that up and up and up and put it out in front of people until the features got more complex and it became harder to manage, and I had to build better conventions and build better organizational patterns. And I really knew my app through and throughout. And I could talk about that in the interview. And because I had to scale it a bit, because I had to keep adding features, it created an interesting conversation in the interview that employers wanted to talk about, that showcased a lot of skills that I had or skills that I lacked, right? And that I needed to improve. And that was where I could identify that stuff that came up in the interviews where they're like, oh, they care about this thing. Is there a feature that I could develop that my users have been asking for that would kind of like add authentication to it? Because like if I'm applying to full stack positions, a lot of these positions might be asking like how I implemented auth stuff, how I implemented OAuth. Which is tricky for new developers to implement. Even just developing a custom OAuth for aspiring backend developers can kind of really set you apart from a lot of other aspiring backend developers. But variety of projects to reinforce shaky knowledge, and a larger, more complex project that you continue iterating on to really deepen your knowledge and build something that really helps you stand out among so many other developers that are just going to continue spitting out cookie cutter apps until they eventually give up because no company cares about those cookie cutter apps. That's the mindset you have. No matter where the coding bootcamp brought you to, skill-wise and mindset-wise, you just use that as a bit of a springboard to then be a better student, learn how to learn, have a little bit more of a solidified path, and you just continue growing and growing and growing outside of your coding bootcamp until you finally land that dev job. Oh, by the way, if you're trying to become a front-end developer, I highly recommend you check out Scrimba. I'm specifically talking about their front-end developer career path. They have a fun, interactive way to learn how to code and become a web developer. And while that's true, that's not the main reason that I want to promote them, honestly. The main reason is their curriculum is solid. There are a lot of curriculums that do not prepare people to actually be competitive in the market, and I've reviewed a ton of programs, and to this day, it is still one of my favorites and one of the best front-end curriculums out there for self-taught developers. And they're backed by MDN, a leading and well-respected resource in the developer community, and I actually personally run my own mentees through the program to prepare them for front-end developer jobs. And if you choose to sign up via my affiliate link below in the description, you actually get 30% off if you sign up for a paid plan, but you have to sign up by the end of February to take advantage of that because it expires after that. Anyways, check it out for yourself. What do you have to lose? Now let's get back to the topic. That's it. We're going to go into a few other details, but that's really the plan. Is no matter where you ended up with a coding bootcamp, it's a ton of project work to reinforce your skills and showcase what you could do with those skills. So a little bit of time should be spent towards coding challenges, DSA problems. I don't think you have to go heavy into leak code problems, and it depends on what you're aiming for. Front end is going to be much lighter on the DSA stuff than back end positions are. You have to study that. You have to research like what are common questions or types of questions that are going to be in back end issues versus front end. What do mobile care? Like what does mobile care about? What kind of problems are they going to test you over? These things differ depending on the type of dev position that you go into, which is another thing you need to think about. You're not going to be that developer just spamming your resume out to every dev position, hoping for the best. No, everyone else is doing that. There's nothing that makes you unique with that. You have a tailored project plan. You have a tailored job search strategy that aligns with more specific positions. That's what's going to make you stand out. So it's going to be majority project work, a little bit of DSA challenges, and then networking. And then, so networking doesn't mean just sending random connection requests on LinkedIn. It means like going to meetups in your local area and talking to other people. You don't just go and leave. That's a waste of your time. You talk with other people, just make human connections. You believe it or not, you don't even have to talk dev stuff to other people. You just like connect with them. You notice a sticker on their laptop. You spark up a conversation, and then eventually say, hey, let's stay in touch. Phone number, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's really good, but like, let's stay connected on LinkedIn. What is your LinkedIn? Because you should be talking about your journey, the things that you learn, the things that you're struggling with, the things that you create on your LinkedIn profile. You should be engaging with other developers and aspiring developers on your LinkedIn to organically build up those meaningful connections of people that can stand you, that want to hear what you have to say, that like how you lift them up, that like how you challenge them in certain ways, in constructive, positive ways. LinkedIn is like that one social platform. And listen, I got to say it every time. I know it's cringe, right? You're always going to have posts with people putting their dog down the well, taking a video and rescuing that dog and turning it into business advice. I know that kind of advice or that those kind of posts exist on LinkedIn. I know it's cringe. You need to just bite your lip, bite your tongue, and get through it. There are going to be other people that you can connect with that are saying things that you care to engage with. You engage with the things that you want to see, and it's going to teach LinkedIn's algorithm that you want to engage with this type of content. Just like when they engage with your content, what you have to say, even if it's posted on other people's feeds, it's teaching LinkedIn that this type of person likes to engage with your content. This is the content strategy on LinkedIn. You're engaging with people that you want to talk with, that you want to interact with, and people that engage with you, that like you. It teaches LinkedIn what kind of people to push your post out to. And that's how you organically build connections and your network and meaningful connections, people that want to engage with you on the best platform that you can do it as an aspiring developer, and that's LinkedIn, as a professional developer in general. So bite your tongue with the cringe, Focus on engaging with the content that you actually like. And if people are posting too much cringe content, you just unfollow them or just remove the connection entirely. You could do that. It's okay. It's not a big deal if you remove a connection because you met someone at a meetup and all they talk about is politics on their LinkedIn. It's like, I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm just going to delete that connection. And I got like, a dozen others that I got this week. So networking is about building relationships in the dev industry, and you never know where those are going to lead. Again, when you build relationships in the dev industry and you make human connections, companies will often ask the team, like, who do we want to hire? Who do we want to bring in an interview before we even make the job posting, right? Because they kind of vet you a little bit and they make your resume pop to the top. If you've like bullshitted about how Cursor Copilot is just making developers bad, which is a awesome take. You have that take. That's a win, at least in my book. Maybe some people disagree with it. You're not going to connect with people if you have that opinion. I don't care. You shouldn't care, right? But you're just speaking your mind and making connections with people that vibe with you. And when they vibe with you, they want to help you. They want to lift you up. That's how you network. That's how you build connections. It doesn't have to be this cheesy thing where you go to like these stuffy networking events and sell yourself. Like, just don't do that. Just connect with them like another human being. Spark up a conversation after a lecture. Sometimes meetups will have moments at the end of the meetup or even before where you can kind of talk to people. Again, sticker on the laptop is perfect. So you could participate in hackathons. Hackathons are really good. You could participate in online hackathons, and you go to online Discords and make friends and build connections. This is what you do. This is what you should have been doing all along, and hopefully you have, because it's a long-term strategy to build up your network. But, better late than never. Start connecting with other developers as a human being that they can stand being around and talking with. That's it. Build meaningful connections. A lot of Coding Bootcamp grads do not do that. They kind of just stick to their local alumni network, which you can take advantage of, right? If you do see alumni from your Coding Bootcamp, you can reach out to those alumni and say, hey, say kind of what program you came from. The business has already validated that, that Coding Bootcamp grad from this Coding Bootcamp is a good developer, which you hope they are. Like if they've been there for like 2 years, they better be a good developer. If they're just starting, you hope they're not a bad developer, giving you a bad reputation already. But you don't know that. But what you can do is reach out to that alumni saying, hey, I actually put my application in. Would you mind kind of just like making sure that my resume gets looked at? You could do stuff like that with an alumni network, but expand outside of that. Don't just stick with your close alumni network. There's so many other cool relationships you can build in the dev industry. Focus on that. What else? I think the thing that holds Coding Bootcamp graduates back in reality, they just get discouraged. They don't continue growing. They don't really follow through with a capstone project, which is eventually what you want to do. And they continue just splitting up their attention between a bunch of different things and not really doubling down on anything. Again, you are doubling down on project work and eventually a capstone project. Most Coding Bootcamps aren't willing to spend 6 months to a year on a capstone project. When I talk about a capstone project, like it gets more impressive the more you dive into it when you provide documentation. If you're going for like a backend position or full stack, you provide API documentation. No matter what position you're going for, you have a proper README. You have a landing page. It's a real thing that people are using. And when you spend 6 months to a year on a project like this, it starts becoming a more impressive project to showcase than like 95% of other people. Most people are not willing to do this. You want to stand out as a Coding Bootcamp graduate. You need to deepen your knowledge, spend a lot more time learning after the Coding Bootcamp, and showcase that you aren't just a Coding Bootcamp graduate. You didn't come out with some random templated project that the Coding Bootcamp had you build. You are a developer that loves coding. You're interested in this. You kept growing afterwards. Coding Bootcamp was just a stepping stone, and you kept going and going and going, and you dove deep. And eventually, because you're applying for jobs right after you start graduating. But eventually, this project, this capstone project, the self-branding you're building for yourself as you're connecting with other developers, it starts finally getting noticed, and you don't know when you're finally going to get noticed, but you have to continue moving forward without long breaks to continue growing until developers start reaching back out to start with that phone screening and technical screenings. And when you start getting a pattern of these, now you know you're moving in the right direction. You've revised your resume in the right format. The cover letters are finally hitting. You following up with employers is fine. Like your messages are finally like humanized and they're getting people to want to respond to you. Your capstone project is getting to an impressive state. And you could provide, like user analytics and usage. You could provide like real tangible data from your capstone project on your resume, which looks way better than some random e-commerce app that was built in a coding bootcamp that is just a graveyard project right now. It's just a basic CRUD e-commerce app that you kind of didn't really spend a lot of time with and do anything with. Do you see my point? I know I'm really being verbose with this, but do you see my point? The coding bootcamp is a stepping stone, and you just continue to grow from there. Use it as a bit of a foundation, even if it's a flaky foundation, to then build yourself into a curious, good software engineers that now starts to get noticed, because most people will give up and they'll get discouraged and they'll go to r/coding bootcamp and just completely quit coding. I'm going to take every opportunity I can to bring that community up. It's fun. But seriously, like not just r/coding bootcamp, a lot of subreddits will be very discouraging. They'll be very discouraging. A lot of black pill people on Reddit. You want to like find the social media platform that is like the biggest aggregate for depressed people that are just victims and never like encourage each other to take action to improve their situation. That's Reddit. That is so many programming subreddits. I bash r/coding bootcamp all the time because I think they're particularly bad, but there are a ton of other subreddits in the programming space within Reddit that are just so discouraging. You can get bits and pieces of useful advice and information, but if you are someone that's highly influenced and gets discouraged easily by what other people are saying, just stay off of Reddit entirely. There's so many other platforms that are going to be better than that. LinkedIn, for example. But yeah, I think that's all I have. Hopefully that gave you a better mindset to go into the job search with, because I know a lot of you can get discouraged, and the rates for placements are going down with coding boot camps and they're lengthening. It's taking coding boot camp graduates longer to get a job, but I can tell you for certain, you stand a better chance if you don't quit than self-taught devs.